All right. Welcome back to Happy Hour with Heather and Guest. This is episode number, excuse me. This is episode number 58. Uh, 58, yeah. Joining me as always is Heather,
Hello.
who lends her name to the show, and I'm that other dude, Andrew. And yeah, we're excited to be here. Um, this was my turn in the rotation. I suggested a band called Witch. Um, and then all of the other bands had some version of Witch in their title. So we've got Witch, we've got Witchfinder, and Rich Charmer. Um, I had not heard of the other bands before. Um, in fact, the only reason I had heard of Witch is that the drummer uh, is this guy, Jay Mascis, who is the frontman for a band called Dinosaur Jr., um, who are sort of, they're not as well known, but they're definitely part of the alternative grunge scene. Um, they were sort of, I think if they had wanted to be bigger, they could have, but they chose purposefully to kind of remain out of the spotlight. But like they could have been up there with like Nirvana and Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam and stuff like that. They're contemporaries, um, and their music is really great. Uh, but I remember discovering that I was like, Jay Mascis plays in a doom band, and he's a drummer for. I mean, because he's a multi instrumentalist. So that's all it took. I was like, well, I gotta check this out. Uh,
Yeah.
so Witch is out of I think they're out of Battleboro, Vermont. Is that what it's? Brattleboro, Vermont. Um, and they have two albums out. The self-titled album "Witch," which I think came out in 2006, and "Paralyzed," which came out in 2008. And you had selected. Well, why don't we kick things off? The 2006 self-titled album, also called "Witch." The first track is called "Seer."
Yeah. And I hope everyone enjoys our witch themed episode. I thought on this that the vocal delivery was really unique. I like in the middle of the song, it's really spooky sounding. The main melody of the song has kind of a sing-song quality to it, and then it's enhanced by the different guitar riffs and drum patterns. I love the vocals though. I think the singer just has a really cool singing voice.
Yeah. Well, so before I get into it, um, imagine for all of you out there, imagine for a second if you found out that like Kurt Cobain played drums in a doom band. That was what it was like for me to discover that this band existed. So going into it, I didn't have any idea what to expect. I was just like, oh, okay, I'd better check this out just because of what was involved. And it turned out to be pretty good. Um, I said the track "Seer" was a really cool stoner. It was more on the stoner side than the doom side, uh, with sultry operatic vocals that were very seductive. The song had sort of like a bluesy framework, and then about halfway through, it dissolves into more of a doom, like a straight up doom, and then it picks back up in the tempo. Um, and the singer reminded me a lot of Laurie S. from the band Acid King, just in terms of the vocal delivery. But I thought it was really cool. It was really cool to see somebody who I only knew from like the alternative grunge world doing something different. Um, and he also has, I think, another band that's more along the stoner lines called Heavy Blanket, and they just released an album. So he's got his fingers in a lot of pies, making great work. Next up after Seer was Black Saint.
Yeah, the beginning is very fuzzy and down-tuned. I like how the song tells a story. There's some really interesting bass work. At the end of the song, the guitar note, it gets higher and higher, and the song gets faster and faster. I was blown away by the lyrics of the song, which are very interesting, and the playing, which is incredible.
Yeah, this one I wrote down tone. Sometimes I just write down one word analysis. Um, for me, a lot of the time when I hear tone, that sort of equates to like distortion. But this was tone without the distortion. It was just a really cool tone. And then I just wrote the word doom. And then I said there were similar elements of the previous song, another well constructed jam, and another breakdown into a quicker paced extravaganza, which I wrote. So first two tracks really cool, and I enjoy when you and I find a doom band that's not like a cookie cutter, like they don't just use the building blocks to make a doom song, but they add their own flavor to it. So I could definitely tell, like, even though there are hallmarks of doom, this band I would be able to pick them out of a lineup and just be like, oh yeah, that's Witch. Uh,
Yeah.
and then the last track off the self-titled album was called Isadora.
Yeah. A song about falling under the spell of Isadora. I like how the song changes tempo. The beginning is slow and more subdued, and then it picks up and gets heavier. Then there's a breakdown, and the end part is quite doomy, and Isadora is repeated over and over, which pretty much made me want to sing Isadora for the rest of the day after I listened to it.
Yeah, this was like, there are times where I feel that a band will have a really great formula. And so a lot of the songs follow the same formula, and a lot of the songs will be similar. Um, but sometimes it's nice to just pick like really different sounding songs. So, like, Isadora opens, it's ethereal and a haunting acoustic finger picking. So it's like an acoustic ballad um, that has subtle doom overtones to it. And then, like you mentioned, the tempo quickens and a distorted riff takes over, and then you're on a galloping pace, and then it slows down to like a molasses type crawl. Um, but all three songs I felt were really different from each other, and I enjoyed that it was like you weren't like, oh wait, is this still the same song that I was listening to before? Um, so yeah, I mean, I didn't know what to expect going into this album just because the only thing I knew was that the drummer was the front band of a grunge band. Um, but it turned out to be a really wonderful self-titled album of doom. And then next up was Paralyzed, and the first track was Gone.
Yeah, and I thought this album it sounds a lot different to me. The this song it doesn't have the fuzzy distortion. It's cleaner, more on the grunge side. I noticed the guitar work and structure is a lot different too. It seems like the guitar is more forward and the vocals aren't as prominent. I picked up on some jazzy progressive elements, a shorter song with a faster tempo.
Yeah, it felt like this album they're they're leaving some of the more conventional doom uh, trademarks, and they're sort of branching out a little bit. Um, for this one, I felt like there was an atonal intro um, into an atonal riff, but they're sort of forging it. There's a great line in the movie All Gone Pete Tong. It's a fake documentary about a DJ who goes deaf, and then he remains a DJ. It's a great movie if you can find it. But there's one part where he's being interviewed about a new album, and he says, "We're bending sound, we're forging it. We've a lyrical smelter." And I felt like with this one, there were a lot of moments where I felt like they were playing a note that was sharp, but they made it work so that it was melodic. It wasn't like, eh. Um, but I felt like they were just sort of pushing the edge of like what was what was like melodic and what was too sharp or too flat, but they were kind of making it work, if that makes sense. Um, but yeah, there were some cool new elements into this one. Like you had mentioned, some progressive stuff, some jazzier stuff. It left behind the Doom template, and it sort of embraced some new stuff. So I was glad to see that they were moving in a slightly different direction than they had from the previous album. And then next up from Paralyzed, we've got Psychotic Rock.
Yeah, I felt like this took traditional song structure and turned it on its head. My brain had a hard time processing this. Kind of like noise rock, it was definitely more experimental. Psychotic rock makes you scream. Psychotic rock is a dream. I actually got an uneasy feeling listening to this. It does something to your senses.
Yeah, this one I wrote a melancholic, somber jam, another one in the atonal territory. And I said the vocal delivery is really somber. There was just a lot of somber feeling to it. If you're playing a drinking game right now and somber is one of your words, I apologize. Um, the song I wrote the progressively up tempo, like someone having a nervous breakdown. That's what I got. So we're similarly, I think uh, we both felt the same kind of unease from the song. Um, and then I wrote, it should have been apparent from the title, Psychotic Rock. And then reminded me of the scene in Wayne's World where Wayne is talking to the bouncer, Tiny, and Tiny's telling him he's playing that night. And he says, the Jolly Green Giants, Crucial Taunt, and the Shitty Beatles. And Wayne goes, are they any good? And Tiny goes, they suck. And Wayne goes, so it's not just a clever title then. So that reminded me. Thank you. I really appreciate how you let me just have the room to kind of wax philosophical like that.
Oh, that's part of the charm of the show.
Well, yeah, no, it's just I more and more I appreciate how much of a gift it is to be able to do that in a safe, in a place where I'm not going to be mocked for doing it. Uh,
No.
so thank you. But yeah, the Shitty Beatles. So it's not just a clever name. Uh, and then the last track was Old Trap Line.
Yeah, and this song is a little bit more melodic. It still sounded a bit experimental to me. There's a lot of really unique guitar playing. I read that the first album is part one and this is part two. I'm not sure if that was the intent, but I thought it was interesting, especially since there are just the two albums.
It could be, yeah. This is one of those like I don't know enough about the band to know whether this was like a side project for Jay while he was Jay. I'm calling him Jay by his first name. A side project while like Dinosaur Jr. was on hiatus, or if this was just he wanted to explore a different genre, um, or if this was like a one-off thing where it's just going to be the two albums. Um, so I don't know, but that sounds about right. So we'll see. I don't know if Witch has a new album slated for the future. It's
Yeah.
been since 2008, so it's been 15 years. But either way, yeah, Old Trapline. I said it was a psychedelic bluesy stoner jam that I felt could be on a jukebox in a bar, like like along with like super sounds of the 70s and golden hits of 1983. You would have Old Trapline by Witch off of Paralyzed, and then I would play it at Fleming's, and all the locals would look up and be like, "Who the hell's playing this crap?" Because they would want like "Living on a Prayer" by Bon Jovi or
Yeah.
something like that. So
Free Bird.
possibly, yeah, or the Pogues. That would always go down well. Um, Witch, 2 albums. Check it out. I'm sure Heather's put together a playlist. So check them out. Definitely worth giving a listen to, in my opinion. Um, and then next up, we have either Witchfinder or Witch Charmer.
How about Witchfinder?
Okay, Witchfinder. So Witchfinder is from, I'm going to try to pronounce this. I'll probably butcher it, but Clermont-Ferrand, uh, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, so France. And on the Metal Archives, it suggests that their lyrical themes are cannabis, witches, and Satan. So just again, the building blocks of Great Doom.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so for this, I just wrote, well, why don't you go first? I listened to an album called Hazy Rites.
And I listened to the album Forgotten Mansion,
Okay,
which
so
which came out in 2022, actually.
yeah, so you listened to a more recent album. I think Hazy Rights
Yeah.
may have come out in the late 2000 teens. Um,
Yeah, and
so
I didn't realize they had that many albums. They have quite a few albums.
I didn't either. But what did you think of Forgotten Mansions?
Well, this is heavy doom with really, really distinct vocals, mostly clean, but the song Marijuana had some growly vocals, and I think that was a guest vocalist, Haldor Grunberg, who also mixed and mastered the record. I thought that was pretty interesting. The song Ghosts happened to fade. There are some harsh vocals, just a little bit. There's a little bit of harsh vocals on that song. I really like the haunting quality of his voice. The music has this thunderous doom bass, and then it gets lifted by organ parts and subtle psychedelic parts. It also has plenty of fuzz. I don't want to promote drugs or alcohol, but I have a sneaking suspicion that this sounds otherworldly under the influence.
Yeah, this was a big again, I had not listened to these three bands before I suggested we put them on the show. Um, so Witchfinder turned out to be, this was probably my favorite band that we've listened, like in terms of just really like embracing the music. It is just some solid doom. Um, and it's like you had said, haunting ethereal vocals. Definitely recommended to get on my part. And I found there was on Bandcamp, one of the comments was, "This is what I want out of music: heavy riffs, uh, heavy riffs, evil riffs, shit that makes your head bang until your neck hurts. Come to the States and destroy our hearing, please." And that's from someone named Rev Bearded Amish. So
That's great.
I thought that really just encapsulated. So yeah, Witchfinder, Hazy Rights, I thought was a great doom. Another band that I can put on the playlist who I can listen to the whole album through and just really from start to finish be like, okay, this is another banger, another banger, another banger. So check it out, Witchfinder, Hazy Rights, and Lost Mansions, I believe. And then
Yeah,
the
Forgotten Mansion.
Forgotten Mansions, yes.
Yeah.
Lost Mansions is a completely separate album. So then the last band is Witch Charmer, and they're from Sunderland, Tyne and Wear, England. And I listened to an album called Euphoric Curse.
And I listened to The Great Depression.
Okay, so what were your thoughts on the Great Depression?
Now, The Great Depression, that one came out in 2014. I would put this in the stoner doom category. Great example of stoner doom with incredibly strong vocals. Some of the songs have dueling vocals, which keep it very interesting. One thing I don't know if people noticed on the last song on the album, it's called Stare into the Sun. There's a point in the song where you think it's over, but if you keep listening to it, there's silence. And then at the end, it seems like it might be a hidden track, where it sounds like dialogue from an old movie. I don't know if I'm right about that, but that's what it sounds like. It sounds like dialogue from an old movie along with just the guitar. And it's about God and superior beings and inferior beings and being architects of our existence. Now, the only reason I know this existed was because I was in the car and I wasn't able, I had to just let it play because I was driving. I wasn't able to change it to another record. So I just let it play and I had no idea because I thought the song was over. So just keep, like, that very last song, just keep listening to it, and after, I don't know, it's like a minute or two of silence, then this starts playing. So I don't know, that that was pretty wild. That was pretty wild.
Yeah, I can imagine. I was I didn't listen to the very end of that song, so I'll have to go back and do that. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so you had mentioned this was more. I felt like this was more of a medium tempo doom stoner album. Um, and so if you are not familiar with the Metal Archives or Encyclopedia Metallum, it's a website that's a really remarkable database with information about every heavy band out there for the most part. But what's one cool thing is they have uh, lyrics, topics of lyrics for each band. So I decided to look that up this time. I had mentioned Witchfinder's lyrics before. So Witch Charmer's lyrics are typically focused on darkness, depression, anti-government, anti-religion, revolution, occult, and nature. Um, and again, more of a medium tempo doom stoner. And then another Bandcamp fan wrote a little bit of everything: sludgy riffs, stoner vibe, retro sound, lots of wah, and a mile wide groove. Witch Charmer manages to pull it all together. That's from Prog Hog 231. So if you're looking for all of those things, then check out Witch Charmer um, from Sunderland, Tyne and Wear, England. Also check out Witchfinder from Clermont-Ferrand, Auvergne-Rhône Alps, which I'm probably butchering. And then check out Witch because it's some cool stuff in the Doom category. And obviously, this episode we had a unifying theme of Witch. Sometimes we do that. Sometimes we don't. You'll have to tune in to the next one next week, number 59. It'll be Heather's Choice,
Yes.
and yeah, definitely check out this playlist. Listen to these bands. Go back and dip into our catalog of previous episodes. There are a lot of really cool bands out there. Um, and I think that's going to do it. Certainly for me, I got nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we
Thank,
hope you're doing
yeah.
well out there. Sorry.
Yeah. And thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and definitely check out all these awesome bands.
Absolutely. And we will be back next week.
Yeah, see you then.